Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, anyone interested in surviving as a Pilates instructor, or using core new tension in their own movement or the movement they instruct or teach about other than in Pilates. It's such a challenge to do my best to try to talk to you as though we were in person. And sometimes when I come off of a recording and see that you were watching, it makes me wonder how good a job I did at communicating what I had to say if I had actually known that you were watching. It's such a challenge to direct the art from within out and do your best at that. So in light of that, there's two things I have to talk about today. One is definitions and quotes. I'm working on this training program to become a presenter of Core New Tension and Michael Miller Pilates, and surely the presenter I will want them to know some things word for word, like definitions. And the first one, okay, so what's Joe's definition of his method? So, in his book, Contrology is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. That to me is his definition of his method. And there is no the there. It's not contrology is the complete coordination. It was written in English. And in Joe's book, any book you have that really has Joe's writing in it, Return to Life Through Contrology, his statement is, contrology is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. So on social media, when I see the kindness of roundness to the expression, where it says, Pilates is the complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit, there's a rub there between trying to explain to everybody what Pilates is to changing Joe's own definition and trying to do it to the point that where you replace the word contrology with Pilates, and this is my point, is that you diminish the definition by replacing Joe's name with his word for his method. See what I'm saying? So, that's a big definition. Contrology is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. Find it in your book. And surely you do have your book of Joe's original writings, Return to Life Through Contrology. And your help helps, but only in the sense that it makes return to life through contrology stand out that much more. And quotes. So we talked about a major definition, which is the definition of Joe's method and what he called it. And how we step away from, or we lose so much if we replace his name with what he actually considered, what he named Pilates. He named his method contrology. And that sets up the Pilates instructor to surviving, because you know it's about survival. And that to survive, you have to have control. You have to be in control, right, of your movement. And ideally, I think Joe would say, be completely coordinated as a human being in body, mind, and spirit. Now, spirit can mean a whole lot of stuff, but within the view of MMP, it means the observer from physics. And that the observer is also the listener, the sensor that is connected to what's beyond itself as a human being, and other than what the thinking part of the human being makes of it. See? So, if spirit is listening, listening is not thinking. And thinking are required to get a complete coordination of body, thinking, and listening. Or to get a complete coordination of your body, your mind, and your observer. That part of you that isn't your mind, but, is observing. Joe's definition. Oh, okay, I quote. So, no Joe's. All right. This, I think, is an accurate color prediction, even though this is an accurate replica of the watercolor that was in Joe's studio by a philosopher named Schiller from a play called The Death of Wallenstein, and who translated the sentence, the whole play, to English, translated this as, "It is the soul which builds itself a body." It is the soul which builds itself a body. And you get deeply into heritage and culture and religion. But in Joe's book that he wrote in English, he didn't use the word soul, he used the word spirit. And to me, I don't worry about the soul part of interpreting my existence. But if I were to characterize soul, I would say soul uses spirit to accomplish its end. So spirit is the means in which the quote, I think, casts a assertion that the translation is that the soul builds itself a body, and my reflection on the quote in German versus Joe's book in English is that he did not use the word soul, he used the word spirit. And as such, I would consider spirit to be the act of observing. And so it may be the soul that calls upon spirit to build itself a body, but to actually do contrology that I think Joe is talking about, regardless of presence of soul or not, is that the observation, the concentration, not just the thinking about it, but the connected to itness, so that it's sensational, so that you're having to listen to input that's differentiable from thinking. And the only reason I would say that is because that's Joe's definition. And so if you're really after Pilates and you want to stay right to the root of Joe's original work, then he didn't say complete coordination of body and mind, and he didn't say complete coordination of body, mind, and more mind. It was complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. And I would say that Michael Miller, me, has come along and tried to characterize body, mind, and spirit as capacities within the human being. And so the instructor, the Pilates instructor, is seeking to coordinate those three capacities as an experience in the moment of the doing. Powerful stuff. And it at least is a point of view that gives all the rest of what you bring to your experience of instructing Pilates. It only deepens the depth and the context to which you participate in the effort, I think, right? And please, you know, if Michael Miller Pilates doesn't make sense to you, that's the saying mark of the brand. Michael Miller Pilates makes sense. And ideally it makes sense in your head, you know, in your thinking. And it also makes sense in your sensation of your experience, right? So, definitions. If you know the definition, Joe's definition of his method, then to be a presenter, it would be good to know the definition of the ideal within the original work, which is the supposition of the theory that is Michael Miller Pilates, right? So what is Michael Miller Pilates? It's a theory about an ideal within the original work based on three facts of Joe's original work. You can spread it around wider to his original work, but you only need three things right from Joe's book. Those three facts that generally incorporate principles associated with in this case, the actual exercises. So Michael Miller Pilates is just a point of view. And there's thousands of points of view. And that alone, when you realize that everybody's sort of reaching for their own degree of confidence in bringing into good what can happen in the practice of Pilates, right? Inconceivable if we go to the Princess Bride, but inconceivable to consider how important it is, how important it can be to have an influence as a Pilates instructor upon their experience in life. Because Pilates gets absorbed a lot or distracted almost a lot in that it's so pulled by rehabilitation, rehab, recovery, escaping pain. To be a Pilates instructor, you have to realize that as an instructor, you're conditioning the body for what comes up next. And that in that conditioning, anticipating the future, rehab can also dovetail into that. But see, the point is that it's rehab that dovetails into the effort of Pilates, where the issue of rehab dissolves into insignificance, and then there is only the continuation of the conditioning, to the point where sometimes the cause of injury isn't encountered again, because you use your body better. Use your body better. That's good. We should use that as its phrase. Use your body better. The definition of the ideal, as best I can say it, is uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement. Uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement. I highly encourage you to see if my website is still there and that sign language is still there, and learn the sign language to important quotes or definitions so that they are part of your presentation and allows you to communicate in two languages at once, especially the difference of the word language versus the gesture language. Make you a better instructor. So, definitions. The definition of coordinating tension is what? 4 words. Oppositional rotation between axes. I've got my arms stuck out here sideways. So my arms and chest rotate one way, and the rotation around my ear rotates the other. So oppositional rotation between axes. It's not complicated. It's simple to demonstrate, and highly likely you can cue a person into having a sensation in a matter of seconds. Feel the back of your neck up by the crown of your head. Pull away from, reach away from your sternum, rib cage pulling down. Engage in that coronary tension. And that's a quote. What is it? Oppositional rotation between axes. Now, it's not a quote to know why is coronary tension important to Pilates. So that comes to the second thing in Joe's book, second fact of Michael Miller Pilates as a theory to explain Joe's original work. I got lost in where I was going. Joe's original work. Oh, the question is, why does coordinating tension matter to Pilates? Because in Joe's original work, the second thing that Joe says that is a fact that Michael Miller Pilates is based on is contrology produces a uniformly developed body. So you ought to know that for sure. There's more to the sentence, and if you knew the whole sentence, I'm happy for you. But all I care about is that much of the sentence, because that establishes the target of a uniformly developed body and what it takes to get there. Right? And from my world and my experience, most of the Pilates culture at the time I experienced it would go along with the idea that Pilates is a whole body engagement needed to get the uniform development that is promised. So it's a uniform engagement to get uniform development. And as soon as that really becomes an issue or a guiding principle, right? A guiding idea is part of the ideal, but as soon as you take seriously uniform usage to get uniform development, then you're talking core new tension, because that's the means through which you get the most uniform engagement you can in the body. My opinion, my point of view. So it's the organism of the biology able to control rotational dynamic at different parts of its being, and it aspires towards the tension needed to move through space, and core new tension plays one endpoint of rotation off of the other, and in some way mirrors the actual equation where it reaches into the shape of the core new spiral, also called the Euler curve or the Euler curve. Fresnel put it to an integral. So it's this shape out there, just this much we're talking. So how am I doing this? Just that much. There's an equation for, without the Nautilus shell sketchings in. But that oppositional curve is the basis upon which road embankments are calculated and roller coasters are designed. So the definition of core new tension and the definition of Michael Miller Pilates are two good things to know word for word, right? Because then lets you explain it all by what words are in the definition. So number two, and that's all there are, two things. So pedigree and practical. Pedigree is unavoidable, and you're a part of it as much as it is a part of you. There's also practical. Now, my practical is what it is, regardless of pedigree. Okay? And we're all doomed to our own pedigree, no matter how proud we may think we are of it. But when it comes to surviving as a Pilates instructor, your pedigree will only carry you so far. It is what you know and can implement and deliver that's very practical, that's sensational, that makes a difference in your student or students, right? That's where hopefully MMP and CT come in handy, because the predominant Pilates culture out there just can't even see it yet. And most, I think that's because the core as a grip at the hips isn't even acknowledged for the fact of the biology accomplishing the physics, meaning that the body can make rotation at the hips. And that's fundamental to the way it supports itself moving through space. and beyond just rotation at the hips, that shoulders have rotational dynamic, as does around the ears and the knees and the ankles and the metatarsals, right? It's more than just a pretty picture insofar as this representation of core new tension in the body is also factual, my opinion, but my experience. Let's see. So to survive as a Pilates instructor, kid yourself as much as you want about how much your pedigree matters. And I would say, whether disclosed or not, your awareness of the point of view of Michael Miller Pilates and core new tension can have a serious impact on your instruction. Maybe not, but so I'm told. And that's what the deal is. The deal is about survival. Why the presentation? Why listen to this presentation? It's not just to entertain and because it's something new. It's also a way of looking at Pilates that more than an elite few can participate in. MMP puts Pilates and puts you and Joseph Pilates in a direct contact through the experience that you get in performing as choreography, knowing that the experience is the target and that the pattern is the response to biology conditioning for the physics that it finds itself in. That's all his genius, right? Monumental. But I think everyone has their heroes for their own reasons that they're a hero. And for mine, it's my interpretation of Pilates is what I give back or profess back. It's about survival. And that's a good place to pick up the thread. And the other good place is right at the beginning, where the beginning of the thread is Joseph Pilates, because that's the human being that started the method, that not only started, but defined it. From my way of looking at things, because he tried to ideally respond to the ideal nature that we find ourselves in, reality, space, gravity. And as a survivor, as characterizing himself as that, because his life had challenges that would put more definition to what it meant to be a survivor than most people, especially today doing Pilates, thought it all. I mean, this Joseph Pilates came out of a pressure in his life, and his method is part of that pressure, and know your definitions and your quotes and your translations, because to the extent that you're confident in the factual nature of the quote, you can take strength from that, confidence, and bear authority, because you can make a distinction that matters. Like, why leave out Joe's word contrology and put his name in there and miss the point that the target of the method is control, or the study of control, or whatever you want to interpret ology as, but controlology. And to subsume to a less accurate, less defined expression of Joe's definition is to dilute it and to encourage the subjectification of it even further, which happens. It's human nature, and it's going on now. What's comforting to me about MMP is that as an ideal, to the extent that it is an ideal, it stays stable. It's the same, it's real. Well, and to the extent that the ideal then turns into real, and that happens in the experience. And what is the experience? You got to know your definition. Contrology is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. And that's an experience is MMP's profession, MMP's point of view. Not everybody's, but MMP's point of view is that the target is the experience, and that the experience is happening in the moment. Right? Not after you've done 10 lessons or you've seen somebody has seen enough progress, but that you are delivering Joe's method as an experience. And that's why I say this ideal point of view of the method gives you a direct connection to the man through the experience. And the more familiar, like we talked yesterday, the more familiar you become, the deeper you can take it, the experience, the complete coordination. All right, so the reason survival is an issue is that life can't live forever. And the DNA is just moving through us. And we're swept up in the degree of survival we get to enjoy by how long a life we get to have. Right? And life, return to life, Joe, all of that, that's a good specific language to know, the title of Joe's book. Because it's an admonition about what you're doing if you're in the pursuit of contrology. You're returning to life. The human being is returning to the experience by conditioning itself to prepare for what might come up. And of course, all of that rehab is well entrenched there as well. But the energy and the direction is conditioning. And that energy and direction is where you take rehab. And to the extent that you are drawn toward dealing with a specific issue, that becomes physical therapy. And many Pilates instructors are also physical therapists, and a few of them, I think, are poignantly aware of the two-way street of Pilates and whether you're heading toward the whole or remediating an issue. Is remediating a word? I think it is. All right. I'm going to Facebook now and try to give a much shorter summary to what I just spoke at length with you. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines. Know your definitions. See behind the curtain. Choose what you put on the curtain. And then do so where every word counts. As an instructor, every word counts. Don't distract your student with words that they don't need to think about. Add 2 and 2. Direct your thinking and Geist